This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Fine, we will start. Chaturmukha samarambham Vagbhadacharya madhyamam Asmadacharya paryandam Vande Guru Paramparam. Ragadirogan sadatanushaktan asheshakaya prasrudan asheshan Aulsukyamoharadidan jakhana Yo purva Vaidyaya Namostu tasmai. Namaskaram to one and all. Today we are supposed to start with the new chapter. Annaswaroop Vidnyaniya Adhyayam Vyakhyasyaamaha Idhi Hasmahu Ratreyadayom Harshayah. So this is about Annaswaroop Vidnyanam. Annaswaroop Vidnyaniya. In the previous chapter, we discussed about Dravadravya Vidnyaniya. So generally, Aharam is divided into two types here, Dravam and Adravam. So that Dravam part we completed in our 5th chapter. Now in this chapter, we are supposed to discuss about the Adrava Aharam. Adrava Aharam, that is in general known as Annam, Annaswarupam. Actually, it is Annadravya Vijnaniyam. Like as we had Dravadravyam, here it is Annadravya Vijnaniyam. But the chapter was named maybe following the naming of Acharya Charaka. Here it is known as, in Charakam it is Annaswarupam. So here Vakbhada also used almost the same term, Annaswarupa Vijnaniya. Actually this is Annadravya Vijnaniya. And briefly, 7 vargas are discussed in this chapter, which will be there in the end, which all things are discussed. That is given as the last shloka. Shuga shimbija pakwanna mamsashaga bhalaushadhaihi vargidairannaleshoya mukto nityaubayogikaha or nityobayogikaha. So that Shuga Shimbija, Shugajam, Shimbijam, Pakvannam, Mamsam, Shagam, Bhalam, and Aushadhavargam. So there are 7 types. Vargidaihi Annaleshoya Muktaha, not complete, Lesham, little bit of a vast or a very huge collection of possible Annadravyas. It is given here in this chapter, Leshaha, Leshaha, Ekadeshaha, and Nityobayogikaha, of daily use. So those stuffs which are in the daily use in different communities, maybe especially in the Indian subcontinent more specifically, they are discussed here, not everything. So that 7 types, Saptavargaha, and the first one is Shuga Dhanyam, Shuga Dhanya Vargam. So as everyone is aware of, Dhanyam, they form the major share of daily food. In whatever form it is, Dhanyam, they form the major share. And in our way of classifying these foodstuffs, this Dhanyam itself is divided into 2 types, Shugadhanyam and Simbidhanyam. Shugajam and Simbijam. Shugam. Shugam, literally Shugam means sharp end. And it means a Tikshnagra Dhanyam. Shugam, Shugadhanyam means a Tikshnagra Dhanyam. So certain grains are having a very sharp Tikshna agram on both sides. The grain is very sharp. That is known as the awn of a grain. That is the technically it is known as awn, AWN. And such awned grains or any grain with an awn, that is coming under Shuga Dhanyam in general. So it is, in short, it is the Tikshnagra Dhanyam. Whereas Simbidhanyam means a it is actually the type of dhanyam which is generally known as the dals, or which come under the legume family. Yeah, that is the better word. Where there will be lentils, peas, beans, which is generally known as the pulses. So this Shimbi Dhanyam is in general the pulses. The other one is that owned seeds or grains. They are the Shuga Dhanyam. And we are going to list out the Shuga Dhanyam first. That Shugam itself is of two types, Shali and Vrihi. Shali and Vrihi. Generally, this Shuga Dhanyam is cultivated in this in irrigated, water retained setup, water retained fields till the seed become fully mature. This water will be retained in the fields. So that is the general way of these Shuga Dhanyam. It is of two types, Shali and Vrihi. There may be different explanations for what is Shali and what is Vrihi. In certain Nikhandu Granthas, we can find certain definitions for or the explanation for this Shali and Vrihi. Kandanena vina shukla haimanda shalaya smrtaha. Kandanena vina shukla. The grains will be white, or not perfect white, but whitish, basically pale white in color, even when the husk is not removed. When still it looks like a pale white, and they generally are harvested in the Hemantartu. Kandanena vina shukla haimanda shalaya smrta. Whereas Varshigaha Kandidaha Shuklaha, when they are dehusked, it's known as hulling. When that husk is removed, then when it is Shuklaha, white in color, such grains or such Shugadhanyam, they are known as Vrihi. They are Chirapakina. They take long time period to mature, and so from the time of sowing till the time of harvesting, the time span will be longer for this Vrihi. That is the general concept, whereas there are certain Vrihi which are very short in their lifespan. Chirapaginaha, that is the word used. Sometimes it may be having different shades of meaning. Obviously, we find one particular grain called Shashtigam, which is considered as the best among the Vrihi, which is having a very short time to mature. that name itself, Shashtigam. Shashtigam indicates Shashtiratrena Pachyade, just ripens or matures in 60 days. That is why the name itself is Shashtigam. So anyway, in general, Vrihayaha Chirapakinaha. So that is the general understanding according to Nikhandu Granthas. But interestingly, these sort of definitions has no universality, because India is supposed to be maybe a place in the entire world which is having the largest diversity in terms of uh, the geographical peculiarities. The subcontinent, Indian subcontinent or India as such, shares almost all types of seasonal possibilities across the world. Every type of climatic conditions you can see in some or the other part of India. Geography is quite diverse, cultural peculiarities are quite diverse, people are quite diverse. So the agricultural practices will be different, and the uh, type of this grains used will be quite different, because of obviously the food of a region is evolving out of the peculiar climatic conditions prevailing in that area. In general, a particular um, food practice or cooking style, or the grains used, or the anything related to the uh, diet of a particular region might have taken uh, hundreds of years, if not thousands, to evolve, and they will have a deep imprint of the flora, fauna, then the monsoon, wind, then the sunshine, everything available in that particular region. But obviously, that is which is getting challenged very frequently and very forcefully challenged these days. Because if you prefer to eat your regional food cultivated by your regional farmers or by yourself, which suits to your climatic conditions, your weather, your body type, where is the space for the corporates who are marketing all these foodstuffs? The ambition or the wish of these very corporate giants is that the entire world, the entire population across the world should have the same diet, should have the same grain, and the same type of preparations on their dining table, so that the production of grains can be highly centralized, and the cost of production can be minimal as far as in terms of investment is concerned, and obviously with a proper networking across countries, things can be easily distributed and the profit share can be maximized. So practically what happened is, this sort of regional food culture is very forcefully challenged, and instead of food, the concept of nutrition came into place. Obviously, the science also helped a lot in such a transition. So everything is measured or understood or explained in terms of the nutritional values of the stuff. So there is a very pragmatic formula of how much calorie an adult male or an adult female or a child of a particular age requires on a standard day, and out of which how much calorie should be um, gained from carbohydrate, how much from protein, and how much from uh, fat, and what all metals, minerals, and micronutrients should be included. And accordingly, there will be availability of standard supplement capsules or tablets, or one scoop of health drink added to so and so things will provide you with this much calorie of energy. So the local food culture is completely devastated. You are not supposed to understand the source of the that calorie. You are supposed to have certain amount of carbohydrate a day. So whether that carbohydrate is coming from wheat or rice or something else, that is getting discounted very seriously. So that is the way in which all this information became immaterial. That is very, this point should be kept in our minds when we go through the finer explanations and the nuances regarding the properties, the guna vikalpa of different types of grains, because practically all these things have become just source of carbohydrate, nothing more, just sources of carbohydrate. So that is the way these cultures are manipulated and uh, completely destroyed. So with this context only, we should go through this textual references of Dhanya Vargam. And I should admit that I am not a scholar, I'm not an expert in this field, and I'll be just traveling with you, recollecting a few slokas, finding the descriptions about certain dhanyas which are given in the text, and we will try to understand something together. Fine. So we are coming to the Shuga Dhanya Vargam. Rakto Mahan Sakalama Turnaga Shagunahritah Saramukho Dirghashugo Lodhrashuga Sugandhika Pundraha Pandu Pundariga Pramodo Gaurasaribau Kanjano Mahisha Shugo Dushaka Kusumandaka Langala Lohavalakyaha Kardamaha Shidabhirugaha Padangaha Tapaniyascha Ye chanye shalaya shubhaha swadupagarasaha snigdha vrishya baddhalpavarchasaha kashayanurasaha pathya laghavo mutrala himaha. So we understand that these explanations regarding this Shuga Dhanyam is basically about rice varieties. Generally, in this section of grains, we have different collections like rice, then we have barley, we have wheat, we have oats these days. So maybe 7 or 8 types of grains we have in this variety, and we find most of them explained later. So we should understand that this is about rice varieties. These days we find that in a big percentage of population in India, the staple is wheat, not rice. But of course, there is a huge proportion who consumes rice. And world over, I think this proportion is also almost same. Wheat is taking the major share, but it was not like that in the earlier days. There are many differences in opinion. What was the uh, standard grain of daily food in the ancient days? It goes very long back to the before Common Era, maybe 3000 in the Indus Valley civilization, like that. And interestingly, I happened to read a couple of notes recently that in the Indus Valley civilization, I think the staple what they were using in their food as grain was barley, and which is supposed to be, I do not know, there are conflicting ideas what is barley, but generally it is believed that, or at least whatever we get these days, is yavam. Yavam is barley. That is the current status. There are admitting the conflict that there are differences in opinion in that regard. And almost all countries might have had their regional types of grains, and India again had almost all sorts of grains in different parts of the country in the ancient days. Here, what we find in almost all of our classics is Annaswaroop Vidnyaniya. The major explanation is about the rice varieties, and that actually demands some sort of an inquiry into the historical aspects of evolution of the sort of food culture prevailing in India today. How far it is traditional, because in most of the classics, especially regarding the Ayurvedic context, Annaswarupam is starting with this sugar dhanyam or rice varieties especially, and the wheat, which is a major uh, food grain these days, has got very little, just a couple of lines of wheat we find in our classics, very short. But interestingly, uh, there are hundreds of rice varieties. I happen to see one list of the different types of rice varieties that Kerala had. Kerala is, as everyone knows, is a very short strip of land as far as the entire country is concerned, a very short strip. And this Kerala was having more than 225 types of rice varieties. 225 types, more than that. So anybody can imagine how vast it was uh, about the rice varieties if the entire country is taken into consideration. But interestingly, or unfortunately, most of them are extinct. They are no more in place. Instead, a lot of hybrid varieties came into place, and the original there are many original attempts in various parts of the country in different states to preserve and propagate the traditional rice varieties of India. Similarly, we had a huge number of wheat varieties as well, but again, unfortunately, I should say most of them are spoiled uh, because of uh, interests of the corporates, because they want huge yield out of the minimum possible land and other investment. So the grains are modified, manipulated with biotechnology or many other biotechnology related interventions. And we have we have very limited types of wheat these days. Basically they are all American wheat to the core. So I think the sort of that food or grain diversity which we had is gone. Obviously, I think in this context, I should mention the names of certain people, at least one name of Dr. Vandana Shiva, who is putting all her efforts. And there are many people who are into the very tough exercise of preserving the traditional rice and wheat varieties. Not only rice and wheat, many things, the tubers, then the vegetables, everything. Anyway, so we are back to the text. This is this Rekta, Mahan, Sakalama, Turnaga, Shaguna, Hritaha. All these things are supposed to be rice varieties of a peculiar type, and the Samanya Guna of this sort of Shuga Dhanyam is there in the last 2.5 lines. Generally, all these Shali, they are known as, or they are considered as, they are Shali actually, Shubhaha. Shubhaha, causing any, not causing any harm. Or we have learned one particular line, Shamanam, Kopanam, Swasthahidam. So generally this Shubhatvam is maybe connected or associated with that Swasthahidatvam. Swasthahidatvam. So Shubhaha, and they are having the property of Swadupaga Rasaha. Rase Page cha Madhuraha. Snigdhaha. They are Snigdham. Then Vrishyaha. They are Vrishyam. Baddhalpavarchasaha. Baddha Varchasaha. Alpavarchasaha cha. Baddham. Baddham. Some sort of a obstructed Baddham. So as far as the Purisha Pravritti is concerned, they cause some sort of a Baddhada. And Alpada as well. Alpada, Alpam, quantity wise less. So that causes some sort of an obstructed bowel movements, as well as quantity wise less bulky as well. Then Kashayanurasaha. Kashayanurasaha. So it is Swadu Rasam with some Kashayanurasam. Pathyaha. Pathya means something related with that Shubhatvam as well. This Pathyatvam, it is causing no threat to the Patham Rasavasrotas. So that may be one way of explaining that Pathyam. Lakhavaha, they are easy to get processed by the Agni. Mutrala, Mutralam, it increases the Mutra Pravritti or Mutram. Then Himaha, Shita Vidyaha, they are Shita Vidyaha. One point I would like to mention at this line very specifically is that the Mutrala property. When you link some of your memories with the Prameha Nidanam, you can find that anything which is Mutrala is a Prameha Nidanam. Medo Mutra Kabhavaham Annavana Kriyajadam Yat Prayaha Tat Pravartakam. So Mutralata can be used for its potential as far as particular treatment or disease or samprapti situation is concerned. But when you use this Mutrala as an Annam, it leaves behind a chance that excessive use can be a prameha nidanam. That gains, that information gains a lot of significance these days, because when we see the presence of prameham increasing like anything around, everyone is looking for safer alternatives as far as the food is concerned. And this shadi, which is having the mutrala property, that should be taken into account for its potential cause if used in excess as far as prameham is concerned. We will see the rest of the shadi and decide which one could be the best in this situation. In the next, we find that the best option is Raktashari. We find it. Sugajeshu. Next line. Sugajeshu varastatra raktaha. Trishna tridoshaha. Trishnaharam and tridoshaharam. That is the Sugajeshu varastatra raktaha. The first one which we find in that list of shadi is Raktashadi. That Raktashadi is supposed to be the best among all this big list of shadis which we saw, and it is Trishnaharam and Tridoshaharam. This Trishnaharatvam should not be considered as its potential to relieve, quench the thirst. It is not really, it is not that easy. It is not such a simple equation like that. Instead, it should be looked for its influence on the total Udagavaha Srotas. Its influence on the entire Udagavaha Srotas, which may be translated in our maybe the recent understanding of electrolyte balance in the body, the fluid and electrolyte balance in the body. So it is when it is mentioned or noticed that it is Trishna Haram, it should be looked for its potential to influence the fluid and electrolyte balance of the system. Then it is Tridosha Haratvam. Tridosha Haratvam again may be considered as one important aspect of a Swastavritta Hitam Dravyam. Need not be always like that, but it is an extra push that way. Then Mahamstamanu Kalamastam Chapyanu Tadapare. So they find some sort of a chronology in terms of the quality. So Rakta is considered as the best among the list. Then the Mahan is the next. Then Kalamaha. Next, like that in the list you can find some sort of a chronology from the best to the worst. So that is the way in which it is followed. Mahamstam anu kalamastam japyanu tadapare. Then Yavaka Hayana Pamsu Pashpanaishadhagadayaha Swadushna Guravaha Snikthaha Pagemlaha Sleshma Pittalaha Srishtamutra Purishascha Purvam cha Nindidaha. So when the best types are explained, you should also know the other side of the coin. In the Shali list itself, you may find certain members like Yavakaha, Hayanaha, Pamsu Bashpa Naishadhagadayaha, which are Swadu and Ushnam. Swadu and Ushnam. Swadu Rasam, Ushna Vidyam, Guru Gunam, Sniktham, Page Amlaha. vipage amlam. Actually, such characters, such members are quite dangerous many times, which is swadu and ushnam, page amlam. So they tend to disrupt the agnisomiyata of the system. That is the problem. Swadu, rasam, amlam, vipagam, then guru, snigdham, ushnavidyam. So they are conflicting characters many times, and obviously this will be a Vikriti Vishama Samavayam. There is some sort of a Vichitra Pratyaya Arabdhada in such members, and they challenge. Of course, interestingly, in certain clinical conditions, they may be used very precisely. If you have a strong grip over the judicious use of such stuffs. Otherwise, when you use them in a very vague or ambiguous or loose manner, you will be putting yourself in trouble. So these sort of things need not be shali or need not be sugadhanyam, whatever the stuff is. That second line, that makes a big story. Swadu, Ushna, Gurava, Snigdha, Page Amla. Obviously, Shleshma Pittalaha. That was something which increases or brings about kopam of Shleshma and Pitta. Tad Pitta Shleshmalaihi Prayo Dushyate. We find a line somewhere else that is about Tekta Kopam. Tad Pitta Shleshmalaihi Prayo Dushyate. And anything, this I think we have already discussed somewhere else. Anything which can cause this sort of Shleshma, Pitta, Vritti and Rakta Dushti, they challenge the Agnishomiyata of the system, which can be detrimental. So we should take care. So Srishtamutra Purishascha, that is an advantage of such stuffs. Srishtamutra Purishascha. We saw that in the previous line, they are Mutra Varthagam, but Alpavarchas. Here it is Srishtamutrata Srishtapurishatvam also is there. So they can be used as some sort of a bulking agent as far as the bowel movements are concerned. These sort of things can be therapeutically used as a bulking agent, but better avoid them as a regular grain. Purvam cha nindita. Again, there is a chronology. Yavagam is supposed to be the worst. Then Hayanam, maybe a bit better. Pamsu, maybe a little bit better than Hayanam, like that. So again, there is a chronological gradation in terms of its utility. Then we find Snigdho Grahi Laghu Swadu Trudoshakna Sthiro Himaha Shashtigo Vrihishu Shreshto Gauraschasida Gaurataha. So we find the next class of Vrihi here, and the section is introduced by presenting the best in the group, Shashtigam, and the properties are quite attractive. Snigdhaha, Grahi, Laghu, Swadu, Trudoshaknaha, Sthiraha. Sthiraha means Sthairya Himaha, Shitavidyam. Shashtigaha, Vrihishu, Shreshtaha. Out of the group of Vrihi, Shashtigam is supposed to be the best. And within the Shashtigam itself, you find Gauram and asitam. So two types. So gaurascha asita gaurataha gauraha shreshtaha. The white type is supposed to be the better than the other type asita gauram. So snigdham grahi laghu swadu trudoshakhnaha sthiraha himaha shashtigaha vrihishu shreshtaha. This shashtigam, using the shashtigam, it is considered as one of the many types of medicinal rices which we had and which we have in India. Even these days, there are many other medicinal rice varieties. Every state will have a few of them, at least a dozen of them, to present as having this medicinal properties. In Kerala, I think we have a few, and this Shashtigam is considered as the topmost one in the list. Then we have many other like Gandhagashala, Jeeragashala, like that. Many other rice varieties in Kerala. And in certain seasons, this is quite expensive also. In certain seasons, the rich people especially used to make this shashtigam as their regular food, especially in the Varshartu, extreme Varshartu, with the potential or the threat of Vadakopam. So this is used, and again there is a Shashtiga Pinda Swedam, a peculiar type of Bahyopacharam, very popular in Kerala earlier, now everywhere. Shashtiga Pinda Swedam. Generally, it is known as Shashtiga Shali Pinda Swedam, which is a misnomer or a wrong name, because Shashtigam by default is not a Shali but a Vrihi. So it is not proper to say that Shashtiga Shali Pinda Swedam. It is Shashtiga Pinda Swedam. So the cooked Shashtigam rice cooked in this Balamulakwadham and Kshiram, and that is made into a potali or pindam, and Swedam is done by immersing this pindam or potali in a mixture of Kshiram and Balamulakwadham. In the boiling milk and Balamulakwadham, this is immersed, and then one after the other these potalis are taken and the massage is done. So that is the way how it is done, which is very, very popular in the tourism industry as well. So this Shashtigam. Then we find other members of the family. Tadakraman Mahavrihi, Krishnavrihi Jadumukhaha, Kukkudanda Kalavakya, Paravadagashugaraha, Varagodalagojwala, China Sharadadarduraha, Gandhanaha Kuruvindascha, Gunairalpandara Smrutaha. So all these are Vrihi varieties, and they are having little bit differences. Gunairalpandara, some or the other differences from what we have seen from the explanation of Shashtigam. Tada Kramad, so many names. Tada Kramad. Then next comes Mahavrihi, Krishnavrihi, Jadumukhaha, Kukkudanda Kalavakya, Paravadaka Shugaraha, Varaga Uddalaga Ujjwala, China Sharada Darduraha, Gandhanaha, Kuruvindascha, Gunair Alpandaraha, Smrtaha. So that is all about that particular group. Then Swaduramla Vivago Nyo Vrihi, Pittakaro Guru, Bahumutra Puri Shoshma, Trudoshastveva Padalaha. So first we saw the best one, Shashtigam. Then we saw another list which is having almost similar properties, maybe a little bit different this way or that way. There is another group or type of Vrihi which is Swadu Amla Vipakaha, which is Swadu in Rasam but Amla Vipakam. Again, a rebel character comes, and that is Pittakaraha and Guru. Bahumutra Purishaha. Ushma, that increases Ushma also. And such things should be regarded as not ideal for daily use. We have already seen that Yavaga, Hayana, Pamsu, Bashpana, Ishadhagadaya, having almost of the same league, these types of Vrihi as well. Trudoshastueva Padalaha. This Padala Vrihi, I do not know what it is, whether it is available these days, whether we are using it as the best source of protein these days or not. Identity is quite difficult, but it is very categorically mentioned that Padalaha tu Trudoshaha tu eva. So it is nothing but Trudosha, means it has got such a very dominant potential to increase the Trudosha. Trudoshastueva Padalaha. Fine. Then next we come to another group of Dhanyam, which is known as Trinadhanyam. Maybe grossly can be translated as the millets. Need not be all the members coming in millet, or something may be different, or the all millets may not be included here. It is there, but by and large, this group can be identified as the group of millets. Kangu Kodrava Nivara Shyamagadi Himam Lakhu Trinadhanyam Pavanakrit Lekhanam Kabhapittahrit. Kangu Kodrava Nivara Shyamagadi Himam Lakhu Trinadhanyam Pavanakrit Lekhanam Kabhapittahrit. So this Trinadhanyam, with an Ayurvedic eye, you can understand as maybe one among the best for daily consumption, because basically it is Kabha Pitta Hrit. Anything which is Kabha Pitta Hrit can be used on a daily basis from any group. So here it has got the advantages. Actually, India had from ancient times, if I am right, from ancient times, India had 3 major types of millets. Geographically, not geologically, but geographically, very easily grown in India. But later, I think maybe that with the advent of global travels, not recent air travels, but from maybe beginning of Common Era or even before Common Era, this millets from various parts, from the China, from the Sahara, that sub-Saharan landscapes, everywhere millets came to India. Now I think, if I understood it right, India is the largest, if not second, producer of millets in the world. And this has got very significant importance these days, because see the second line, it is Lekhanam and Kabhapittaharam. So in an era, time period, where staulyam, obesity, is the prime concern everywhere, across all sorts of socio-economic strata, worldwide, this sort of a sandarpanotha vikaram is causing the major non-communicable disease burden. Here we have something which is very cheap as far as the cost factor is concerned, and which is very precise and very particular in certain aspects, like it is lekhanam and kapha pitta hrut. So switching over to a millet diet slowly, obviously slowly, because you are not supposed to jump into a new diet all of a sudden, which will be creating a lot of issues with your agni, your koshtam and everything. So it should be a very careful step forward, but there is a potential. And it is pavana krit. That is another risky factor about it. And I think this Trinadhanyam was very elaborately used, very widely used in India, even maybe some 40-50 years back even. And the cultivation practices are somewhat easy when compared with wheat or rice. And the total expenditure is very, very negligible. Even you don't need the sort of irrigation facilities that we otherwise require to cultivate rice and wheat. So there are many advantages, and obviously you will never go to a hefty body or a heavy body, sthaulya. So you'll be lean. And I always remember that the old pictures of Indian people, if you see maybe a group of people in the 50s or maybe in the beginning of the last century, I think all the people were looking like thin and tall beings, which shifted all of a sudden maybe by the late 70s or the early 70s onwards. If you look, they all became very puffy, very obese, and so that should be connected, associated with the change in these sort of food habits as well. So going back to the use of Trinadhanyam may a way forward to come out of this excessive Staulyajanya vikaras or Sandarpanotha vikaras. And it is Kathapitta Hrit, and that Pavana Krit, that potential should be addressed maybe by adding some sort of a locally available vegetable oils, or some little bit of dairy products like ghee or butter, or whichever is easily available and safe to use. By that you can compensate the risk of unwanted Vadagopam. Meantime, you can make use of the potential of that Lekhanatvam and the Kaphapitta Haratvam. So that way, it being Kaphapitta Haram, it has got tremendous influence in that Agni Shoniyata, in maintaining the Agni Shoniyata properly, and giving the ayus, in short, in making the ayus. Fine. Then Bhagna Sandhanakrit Tatra Priyangu Brahmani Guru. So among this list, Priyangu, in the one of the Trinadhanyam, it is Bhagna Sandhanakrit. See, it is very specific and very important. Bhagna Sandhanakrit. I have tried this property in a case of a non-union of a fracture on the thigh and the femur. Of course, it was not an attempt to make that non-union addressed with the Priyangu alone. There were many other interventions done, but I included that Priyangu as well, and that worked well. So I may not be able to attribute the entire outcome to Priyangu alone, but I remembered this line, Priyangu Bhagna Sandhana Krit. So that I tried, and I was happy to get the best out of it. Brahmani. So even though it is Lekhanam and Pavanakrit, as a group, this Priyangu is Brahmani and it is Guru. That is why it is mentioned specifically. Generally, Trinadhanyam is Lakhu, but Priyangu is Brahmani and Guru. Then Koradusha Paramgrahi Sparshe Sido Vishapaha. Koradusha Paramgrahi Sparshe Sido Vishapaha. Koradusham is always a conflicting character. Generally, we find Koradusham is as Kodrava. Even that is not conclusive. There are differences in opinion about whether Koradusham is Kodravam or not. And Kodravam we find in many other situations as well. And one towering presence is in the Raktapitta Nidanam. Bhrishoshna Tikshna Kattvamla Lavanadi Vidahibi Kodravodalagaischannai Stadyuktai Adisevitaihi. So there we find this Kodravam, and that if we take that Koradusham and Kodravam are same, it is Vishapaham. Actually, it is Vishapaham and Sheetam. Sparshe Sheetaha, need not be in Vaidya, but it is Sparshe Sheetaha or Sparsha Sheetaha, and Param Grahi, Param Sangrahi. So these are the properties of Koradusham. Koradusham, the word itself indicates that Koram means Rektam, Dusham Dushayati. So it is a Rekta Dushti Haram, but it is Vishaharam. Something which is Rekta Dushti Karam cannot be Vishapaham, Vishaharam, but Koradusham is like that. And Kodravebhyo Vishasyeva Vadandyamasya Sambhavaha. That also we know. So it is Vishaharam, but it can generate Visham when it is heaped together for a long time. Within it, there will be a toxic generation, an intrinsic change happens, and that makes the stuff little bit toxic. So Kodravebhyo Vishasyeva Vadandya, all these things can be recollected now. And that Koradusham is Paramgrahi, Sparshe Shido, Vishapaha as well. Then we find something else which starts with the properties of Yavam. But I think we have already covered 1 hour. So we will stop here. I do not know whether the way in which we go in this chapter is of some use or not. But as I mentioned earlier, I do not have more say on these topics. This is the way in which I would like to understand these stuffs. So shall we stop, Nilesh?
Yes, sir. Definitely.
You can add something.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to know, sir, one small query, that what exactly Priyangu means, because there is a slight confusion in that Priyangu part.
Priyangu, there is 2 things known by that name, if I am right. In the market also, 2 things are available. One is this Trinadhanyam, and another is I do not know that exact English name. In Malayalam, we call it as Nyazhal Poovu. That is also Priyangu. I may be able to get the Sanskrit name, alternative name for that another product. So 2 things are available in the name of this Priyangu. I will try to understand, to give you a name which you may understand. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Or if somebody else has got a better understanding about that another product, they can also share their ideas.
Yes. If somebody also wants to add,
Yes, yes.
are most welcome.
Together we learn. No one is there, I think.
Yes. Uh, as you mentioned, sir, I think means this chapter has got means the first part has got nothing much to explain. I think means
Yeah, we will move fast.
yeah, we can move fast forward so
Yes,
that further we get time for some specific dravyas which we
exactly.
can elaborate, sir.
Yes,
Hello.
yes. Prasham, you are audible.
Yeah. Nilesh. Whether it is Charoli in Marathi?
Yeah,
I expect it's Charoli in Marathi. We call it Charoli.
uh,
We use it as Priyangu here in Maharashtra.
Priyangu, no? Yeah, but
Yeah.
sometimes they mention that it's not Priyangu.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is it an Aushadham or Annam?
it's
It is
Annam.
Annam, type of a type of Dranadhanyam only, sir.
That I can find out in the next session. But there is another. Yeah, right now I find in the Google that there is another plant which is known as Calicarpa macrophylla, which is also taken as Priyangu in our as a medicine, not as Annam, but as
Yeah.
an Aushadham. So here we know that there are two things which is taken as Priyangu. One is a grain, this Trinadhanyam, and another one is a Aushadham, which is not a grain.
Okay.
I'll try to give more about it in the next session.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Yes, sir, definitely. Uh, yes, sir. So, sir, I think with this we can conclude today.
Okay, please.
Yes. Thank you, sir, once again, and
Okay.
for your time.
Okay, good night to all.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Good night, sir.